Imagine digging for months, deep underground, with nothing but hand tools. Not for treasure, but for one of the world's most notorious criminals. The vibrations of a vehicle echo above them. Wary of any sound that might give them away, they hold still as a prison patrol passes overhead. The work would have been much quicker with modern tools like jackhammers or boring machines, but that would create noise and draw attention to their staging area, just a mile from the prison perimeter, 30 feet below the prison's main yard. The chance of discovery is slim, but after months of secret tunneling, they can't risk it. They started constructing to small homes as a cover. These homes never progressed beyond a rough brick shell because they were never meant to be inhabited. Despite his long history of ordering some of the most horrific violence Mexico has ever seen, El Chapo maintained a cordial and even pleasant attitude with his prison guards and fellow inmates. The tunnel diggers faced a daunting task from the start and knew they had to move fast. Despite the incredible pressure, they not only reached El Chapo before any potential prison transfer, but managed to break through to his cell just 16 months into his prison stay. His phone conversations were carefully monitored, and his mail checked by prison officials, but not a single hint of the ongoing plot was ever revealed. Its walls were reinforced where needed with wooden paneling, and a generator pumped fresh air through a mile-long ventilation system to keep the tunnel oxygenated. Instead, they provided the perfect disguise to begin the tunnel that would set El Chapo free. The tunnel diggers had made sure the tunnel was just tall enough so the boss wouldn't have to hunch as he walked along it, a classy prison escape if there ever was one. A few feet into the mouth of the tunnel, El Chapo boarded a small motorcycle affixed to metal tracks. The carts full of dirt it had pushed along for months were gone. Emerging a mile from the home, the two stole a vehicle at gunpoint, though the driver immediately reported it to the police. After issuing an alert for the stolen vehicle, federal police officers discovered the car and arrested the two fugitives. The 4 officers sent pictures of El Chapo to their superiors, only to be warned that the police had received a tip-off that 40 heavily armed assassins were en route to free El Chapo. Just moments after leaving his cell, El Chapo was cruising along the well-lit tunnel like a kid on an amusement park ride. The officers, armed with M16 assault rifles and pistols, prepared for what was surely their last stand. El Chapo taunted them, telling them they were about to face death, and after them their families. Yet the officers held their ground, ready to die for duty's sake if need be. The officers were ordered to a nearby motel on the outskirts of town, where they holed themselves up in an empty room and prepared for a possible shootout for their lives. All the while, El Chapo laughed, echoing his previous threats. Knowing how easily corruptible public officials had been in the past, El Chapo bribed the police officers, offering them money, homes, and even lucrative jobs if they let him go. Little did the desperate kingpin know that he was dealing with a new brand of Mexican police officer, one not as easily corrupted as his predecessors. Once the glare of the headlights faded, the barricaded officers could see military trucks full of Mexican Marines, rushing to take up defensive positions around the motel. El Chapo would not escape from Mexican prison again, and 2 years later, any hope of ever escaping would be extinguished as Mexico approved an extradition request to the United States. Safely in U.S. custody, El Chapo faces life in prison, though he may have been one of the deadliest men in Mexico's history. The drug kingpin would ultimately be remembered as nothing more than a sobbing mess as he begged U.S. justice officials for leniency, which they would not grant. 2 minutes later, El Chapo ended his joyride, climbing up wooden steps and emerging into the empty shell of a home his crew had been secretly working from for a year and a half. They reached so close to their goal, the prison cell of Mexico's most famous drug kingpin, Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán. This isn't a movie. This is the incredible true story of how Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán pulled off one of the most audacious prison breaks in history. His newest safe house was compromised weeks before his arrival by careless gunmen spotted by locals. Responding to reports of heavily armed men, Mexican officials put the house under surveillance and intercepted communication saying that grandma, or aunt, was coming to visit. Realizing this had to be a high-value target, officials waited for their chance to strike. Once El Chapo was reached, he would ride that same motorcycle, quickly traversing the mile distance to freedom. All that dirt had to go somewhere, so the tunnelers cleverly transferred it to the tunnel opening where others would spread it around the field outside, rather than dumping it in giant piles that would undoubtedly draw attention. Moments later, the ceramic bottom of the shore popped free, and a friendly face greeted the imprisoned drug lord, beckoning him into the darkness below. Wasting no time, El Chapo ducked into the secret tunnel, climbing down 30 feet into a passage only as wide across as a man, but just tall enough for El Chapo to stand upright. Men freeze in place, pickaxes and shovels at the ready, inside a well-lit tunnel under the Mexican countryside. For months, they tunneled through solid rock with only pickaxes and shovels, moving as fast as possible with their limited equipment, but with extreme caution. Before the tunneling even began, El Chapo's powerful drug cartel bought a small plot of land as close to the prison as they could get. But the tunnel crew faced immense pressure to finish quickly due to his history of escaping prison and evading police raids. Mexican authorities could transfer El Chapo to another facility at any moment to thwart escape attempts. Why would someone start construction on an empty plot of land and then suddenly stop with only a shell of a home built? Time was running out, and pressure mounted. Every day the tunnelers took to reach their boss was another day the entire operation could be for nothing, requiring a new escape plan in a completely different location. And that wasn't all. The unfinished buildings were starting to draw attention from local officials and curious villagers. Inside his cell, El Chapo was the model prisoner. El Chapo was a true professional by now, patient, but even his patience was wearing thin. The tunnel they constructed was sophisticated, impressing officials who would later remark that a tunnel of that magnitude should have taken 18 months to 2 years to build. On the ground, the tunnelers had laid rails and used a motorcycle to shuttle 2 carts filled with dirt back and forth along the shaft. Still, the presence of fresh dirt littering acres of empty fields was sure to eventually attract scrutiny and questions that the fake construction crew above ground would easily answer. Suddenly, in the middle of the night on July 12, 2015, the sound of metal scraping came from El Chapo's shower inside his cell. Often mocked for his short stature by his enemies changing into clean clothes, El Chapo then climbed into a truck and was whisked away into the dark of the night, leaving behind an incredible mile-long secret tunnel and a completely frustrated prison system and Mexican government. El Chapo would be caught again just months after his escape. 1 month later, Mexican Special Forces soldiers raided the home and killed several bodyguards, but El Chapo and one of his most senior lieutenants escaped via, you guessed it, another secret tunnel. El Chapo, however, wouldn't go without at least trying to buy his freedom. All 4 officers refused El Chapo, after which his offers of honey turned into vinegar, telling the police officers that they were both going to die. With friendly forces still tied up at the compound, suddenly, a convoy of vehicles lit up the road outside, clearly headed for the lonely motel, as the vehicles began to turn into the parking lot. However, El Chapo's taunts died in his throat. Minutes later, a thoroughly defeated and dejected-looking El Chapo was dragged into an SUV and rushed off to an airfield.